Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to College Counselor Rally. I'm Miss Rally, your college counselor, and today I'm joined by Amy Mitchell from Emerson. She is the Senior Associate Director of Admission with Emerson, and we're so grateful to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me here. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so if you haven't seen our previous video, I'll put a link at the bottom, but go ahead and go back and watch the pieces of the application video first. I would recommend that. And today we're going to dive in deeper into the college essay. And I'm really excited because I feel like this is one of the pieces of the application where a student has the most control. And I don't know, when I work with students, find that it can be overlooked, the amount of time. So let's just start off very general. And what is the purpose of a college essay?
So it's actually, I think what you just said was really important about the control, because it is truly the only place in the entire application that the student is able to speak for themselves. So I always talk about, when you think about looking at, use a Common App as an example, you have your grades speaking for you, your activities list is speaking for you, your letters of record, other people really speaking for you. And so that essay portion is the chance where we can really get a sense of the student's voice, who they are, and then that helps us assess fit and, think about what kind of person this student is. So it's really truly their chance to let us know who they are as humans and what that means to the actual college that they're planning to apply, and how does that fit is assessed.
I love that. And I think it's really important. You mentioned the word fit. And so
Mm-hmm.
for
A
all
lot.
students, yeah, which is good. But that's,
Yeah.
when you're researching a college and thinking about where you want to go, you're diving deeper. Each college is different. And so when a student's researching, that could absolutely even give you some content for a college essay when you're finding different programs and things that you like about a school.
Absolutely. I think that's it really important. And I think, the personal statement is probably what we're focusing on right now, but we're also going to have some supplemental essays. Typically, not every school, but many will have those supplemental essays. And that's where students can really dive deeper. And, one of the most common is why us? Why do you want to attend this school? So you really can use some of that deep research in those areas.
Yeah, so you mentioned different types of essays. So let's just, for any, younger students and really kind of putting a framework around this, what are the different types of college essays that a student might see on an application?
So there is a pretty wide variety. So the personal statement can go, is sort of the main larger essay. Usually it's the one that's going to be around 600 words. And that has a pretty wide variety. So if you're looking at the Common App, there's a number of options that students can choose from to answer. But one of the options is talk about anything, and it's an option of your choice. Some schools that are not on the Common App might ask a specific question, and it really is meant to be a personal statement. I know sometimes students are worried about, oh, I don't feel funny to write in the I voice, but that's really what it's meant to be. Beyond that, it's pretty common for colleges to ask those supplemental questions, which will be shorter essays as a chance to get to know something about a very specific topic usually. Within the personal statement, there's a pretty wide range of things that of the types of personal statements. Some schools will ask, they want it to be very personal, so they're going to ask a very personal question. So maybe a time you overcame a problem, or a failure you overcame, or something that you're most proud of. So there might be questions like that. Sometimes they'll ask, it'll be a personal statement, but it might be a more tell us about an issue that's really important to you and how you helped overcome it. Or again, that why us might actually be there. They might only ask that. It really, I always say with admissions, the answer is always it depends. Some schools will throw you a curveball and do something really creative, and you might get a really creative topic. So I know at Emerson, one of our supplemental questions is, if you were to write the novel of your life, what would you title it and why? And so sometimes you'll get this kind of random, a little bit more creative, quirky question as well.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's important. Well, depending on where you're at in the college process, what grade level. So let's say you're, a junior, rising senior, maybe you're beginning to build your college list. And I think that might help at least tailor down the types of essays. And you can go to Emerson, for example, and see the
Mm-hmm.
amount of essays that's expected of you and organize it and really structure it from there. But if you're just starting kind of the brainstorming process, you're definitely going to have one of those larger personal statements. And what are the things that you want to speak about, whether that's a hardship or a proud moment? Because I think a lot of students, can get a bit into the weeds of the application. And I
Yeah.
think with the college essay, the brainstorming piece is so big, like figuring out what story do I want to share to a college, and then how do I craft that where it's authentic, interesting, it's in my voice. So the brainstorming process, I don't know about you, but I feel like students, uh, some tips or just some ideas about how do I even begin to brainstorm that?
It's a daunting task. So think
Mhm.
about even at our age, which we won't tell anybody what that is,
No,
but
we're
we will
when
not.
I applied to
But
college.
right. But if you just sit down and write a 650-word essay about who you are as a person, oh my gosh, that's a huge task. And
Yeah,
so no wonder it is one of those deer in the headlights kind of moments for students where they get a little panicky. One of my brainstorming tips is always free writing. So, and this is something they can do, right now. Younger students can start this, which is to set a timer. If 20 minutes is too much, you can start at 10 minutes, and don't have a topic in mind. Let's just literally start writing. And you might find that, don't think, don't craft, don't think about grammar. So if you are running out of things to say, you can say the lighting seems weird here, or, my
that's
mom's cooking
great.
dinner and I smell fried onions, or whatever.
Right.
But it's just getting you to the habit of writing and warming up. And then I always tell students, go back, read it, and circle a couple of things that stand out to you. And then you do that process again from those sentences, and then that's your starting point. And a lot of times students will find that they've written something that they're like, wow, I would have never written about that, but that's
Right.
really interesting.
That feels like so much more of an authentic process too. I think a lot of times students are really focused on, and I mean, how can you not? You feel really, you're presenting yourself on a college
Right.
application, but I think students are writing to what you as an admission officer would want to see on an application, rather than if we took the college piece
Right.
out of it and we're just trying to write and present ourselves in a way, like, making it very simple and starting with I love the timer idea, because I
It
think,
really works.
yeah, because it gives you just a short amount of time, and then you can get up and get a snack and do it the next day or
And
next
do it
week.
again. And it also
Yeah.
eliminates, I think, to me, that eliminates that pressure of I need to write what people want to read.
Hmm.
And the reality is, you don't know who's reading your essay. You don't know who that
That's very
admission
true.
counselor is on
That's
the
a good
other end of
reminder.
the application. So, I think sometimes there's this idea of I'm going to write to what they'll be really excited to hear. But the truth is, you really don't. It's hard to know who's there reading it. And so be thoughtful of really presenting yourself in the way that you want to present yourself. The
Hmm.
other thing I find that students will often get their first draft of the essay, and it was so hard, and they're so excited they got that first draft. But when you read through it, the last paragraph, their conclusion, is actually they wrote themselves to what they wanted to write about. They just sort of crammed it into the conclusion, and the rest was all startup writing. So a lot of times once you get that first draft, what you want to do is do a second draft where you're actually using your conclusion as your beginning and as your topic, and then rewrite it. And I know that rewriting doesn't sound fun.
No, not at all. But I
But
do love
rewriting
that
is,
tip, because
yeah,
a lot of times, keep in mind, if you're a student writing a story, you need to be the center point. And this is not a time to be humble, or
right, right.
a time to write an entire essay that builds up from a story of what happened to you, and then getting to the point of change, or the point of growth, or the point of
Right.
challenge, and how you overcame that. A lot of times the first draft, I love that you brought that up. The first draft can be a very therapeutic, okay, we got out this story, we wrote it out,
Right.
now let's go in and actually highlight and circle what pieces were like the aha moment, or your growth,
Right.
or the insight. And I think that's really interesting. You also mentioned you don't know who's reading your application.
No.
I also think a lot of students, when you're thinking about different voices in your application, a lot of students might get too much feedback from too many voices.
That
So,
that
yeah,
happens a lot. Yeah,
yeah,
that does. And that can be tricky. I think it's important to get feedback. You want to get feedback. You want to, ask other people what they think, but you also want to be true to yourself. And I think sometimes what happens is students start editing from all these different perspectives, and then they end up sort of with a shell of what they started with. And that can be really tricky. So there's a fine line between, yes, you want people to read it, yes, you need editing help, but the heart of what you're writing, you really want to feel that you're protective of that. I don't know if that makes sense, but that you're
yeah,
you're
no,
protective
it
of that.
absolutely does. Yeah, I mean, this is a very vulnerable piece of the application. You're sharing a
Mhm.
lot, and whoever you're sharing your essay with, it's a good idea, but be mindful to keep it, less than a few people that you trust, and not over edit it and lose
Right.
your voice in it, which I think is really important.
And
I
it's
guess
okay
so.
not to, oh, sorry, I was going
Oh
to just
no,
say, it's
go for
okay
it.
not to
Jump
show
in.
it to, it's okay not to show it to mom and dad. If you feel like that your mom or dad are really pressuring you to see it, and you feel like, they're hypercritical sometimes, or they're a little more controlling about how they want your voice to be, it's okay to say, you know what, this is something I'm going to send into the colleges, and you don't need to see it. Maybe in 10
That's a
years you can
good
see it.
tip. So mom and dad, if you're listening, it's not an offense
Sorry,
to
it's
you, but
not.
as an admission counselor, I mean, how many essays roughly, I mean, it would just be funny to break it down. How many essays in a cycle, meaning how many essays in one college year roughly are you reading? And then over your career, I mean, how many of you would
Oh
you
my gosh.
guesstimate?
So in an average cycle, wow, that's a tough one.
I
I've
know,
been in
right?
admission 20 years, and I would say in an average cycle, I read about 20, like an average year, I read maybe 2,500, just for as the personal statements. I'm not counting supplemental, because then we're
Oh my
tripling that.
gosh. So that's
So I
one
can't do
year.
math, but it's a lot. It's a
Yeah.
lot. It's a
Yeah.
lot. And my background is actually, this is why I always say you don't know who's reading your application. I taught college level English for many, many years, and I have an MFA in
Oh,
writing. So that's sort of my
wow.
background. And so I always say, you don't know that it's someone, in that boat, or not in that boat. You don't know
Yeah.
someone's political affiliation, how they feel about the world at large. And so
Yeah.
it is one of those things, you want to be
Right.
thoughtful of.
You want to be cautious of you want to be authentic. That's the word I keep using for this, but
Right.
also,
I think it's very true.
mindful that other people are reading your application,
Hmm.
and they may not have the same viewpoints. Um, so what are some things that stand out to you when you read like a really good essay and you think, oh, this one stuck with me?
So I think that the story is always, it's always, talking about the numbers of the amount of essays I read on average, and or think about there, that we talk about that story part. What is it that led you to whatever it is that is going to be in your conclusion of the essay? That story part is what can draw me in, and that's really nice when I'm reading 100 essays at a time, is to get lost in this. I don't know why I stuck on mom cooking, but let's say you're right, you're talking about your mom's cooking, and you really are describing the smells and the taste and things, that I can get lost in that for a moment. But as much as we love that descriptive writing, if it's all descriptive writing and then there's no lesson, then what did I really learn about you throughout that
Mm,
essay? So I think
yeah.
the story piece is really important, but then we need to break down the why was this important to me, and then what does this mean for who I am now? And ultimately, what I think makes a really good essay, and the ones that appeal to me most, are when I can really take that essay and envision that student on our college campus in the future. And that's really what we're doing. When we're evaluating an application, we're evaluating a student's potential, not necessarily who they already are, but who we believe they will be on our college campus environment. And so a good essay is able to draw me in, but then allow me to really envision that student and see, kind of project them in the future. So I think that those are the ones that tend to resonate with me the most.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to what we mentioned earlier. What you mentioned earlier was fit. And,
Hmm.
when you can only go to one college, right?
Right.
Theoretically.
Right.
You can go to as many as you want, but realistically, we're hoping, to
Right.
go to a college that makes sense for us. We're excited about it. And it's a really good fit emotionally, academically, socially, the location, all that good stuff. So when you're researching a school and submitting an application, I think the research piece comes into play that can help, especially with that why us essay,
Hmm.
of course. So if we break down a why us essay, I guess some tips for good and some examples of not so great.
Sure. Well, one of the things I've seen this year, and it's driving me crazy, is students that have so we asked three. We have the personal statement. We have a why. I think ours is really, why did you choose the major you want to choose, but it's kind of a why us. And then the novel sort of creative question. I am seeing students copying and pasting from their personal statement to answer those supplemental
Oh
questions.
no,
And
that's a
I'm seeing
waste
it
of
a
space.
lot. Yes,
That is
it's so
such a waste of
irritating.
space.
It is. It is. And it also just comes across as lazy. So I can't help but think the
That's
student
true.
couldn't take the time to write an extra 250 words.
Mhm.
And so don't do that is my first thing. I'm seeing it probably in 1 in 5 applications.
Ooh,
And
that's a lot.
we're a pretty difficult school to get into. So I'm thinking this is maybe more prevalent beyond us. So first of all, don't do that. Second of all, for the why us, you want to think about things that are not easily found on the internet. You don't necessarily want to, I like that this is a small student body with small class sizes. You want to think a little bit beyond the box. One of the things that I think can always be a good answer to that is to think about some kind of special college tradition that campus has that's maybe unique to them, because that really allows you to kind of talk about something that you're looking forward to and then allow us to envision it. Writing about something that you're excited about and looking forward to in the classroom academic experience. I think a lot of times students will talk about the first time I visited, I could see myself at the dining hall and hanging out in the lounge. And we have all this stuff where, yes, we're glad you enjoyed the social aspect of campus, but you ultimately
Right,
are coming for an education
right,
too.
right.
So, think about ways that you can really talk about something that's distinct, that's not an easy, something that's an easy find on the website, and to be able to dive a little deeper into that.
Right. I like you doing like a day in the life, or
Mhm.
if I went to Emerson, what would my semester, what would my week look like, and kind of walk through your day and really
Right.
dive in. And what class would I take, and if I left class, would I go to what office would I
What
go to get
organization would
help,
I
or
be a
what
part of?
organization?
Right.
Yeah, and I think that envisioning your time there really helps kind of piece together the things that are important to you in a college. It helps you kind of narrow down. But I agree with you. The laziness, that's a tough one.
Oh, it
I
drives
think
me nuts.
also, you are potentially writing, you know, 3 essays per college you're
For
applying
college,
to.
sure.
So, and again, going back to ultimately you're committing to one. So really being mindful of the amount of colleges you're applying to,
Mhm.
so you can organize your essays, because,
Right.
you know, its quantity is not to be, the same as quality here, right? So a lot of
Right.
students are throwing out these applications thinking if I submit more and more, it'll increase my chances. When really, if you sit down and write, focus on your essay, research the why us, and really present a strong application, your chances of admission will probably go up, right?
That's so smart. That's
Yeah.
absolutely true. I think casting a wide net is not the smart move.
Hmm.
And it also means that you aren't having the time to really research those schools. So you may get admitted to more schools, but they may be terrible fits for you.
Hmm.
So what difference does it make? You just spent a lot of money on application fees, and you now are going to go research the school and realize, oh wait, why did I apply
I
here?
don't want to actually go.
What did I do?
And then
But
you might be taking a space away from someone who really wanted to
true,
go.
who
So
really was so excited.
you never know.
Right. It's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, so if you're a junior at this point in time, it's in the spring semester, over the summer. This is a really nice time, I think, to start thinking about the college essay in a very broad way. Like you mentioned, that brainstorming, that 10 minutes writing, just kind of,
Mhm.
don't think about the college piece yet so far, but think about what would I want to share if I could sit down and have a conversation, and what would I want you to walk away from. And then really heading into the fall semester, organizing, okay, I know where I'm applying, what specific essays do I need, and then making sure you're fine tuning and fitting all of those pieces.
Absolutely. Use the
Yeah,
summer to your advantage. And
yeah.
the other thing you can do is, it might feel a little funny, but ask your friends how they would describe you. Sometimes that will give you some good descriptors of those are things. Oh, I am that kind of person, and I didn't think about it. Maybe that's the message I want to leave in that essay. So you can take it, use this time to text some of your friends and say, what are your top 3 adjectives you'd use to describe me?
I love that. That's great. And that's kind of, that's fun, and it's light, and it's, a lot of times, again, I think students feel the need to be this grand, I had this massive challenge, and maybe you do, and that really is something that is, you've grown, and you've had an insight and an amazing experience, and you're really proud of it. That could be your essay. But if you're a student that hasn't had a massive challenge, that's okay. There's a lot
Absolutely.
to you, and that you can talk about. So the idea of asking your friends, even taking like personality assessment,
Hmm.
like 16 free personalities. I'll put the link. You can do it in less than 15 minutes, and get
It's a
descriptors
great
for your
idea.
personality type. Like even you mentioned an essay about what major you might want to do.
Hmm. It
So we'll
doesn't
do
have
that.
to be, I think students get so bogged down on the idea that it has to be a big dramatic story, and it absolutely does not need to be. You know, there are students that are coming to the plate already knowing I have to write about this. This is so crucial to me. This is what I already know. But most students are going to come to the plate being like, I don't know what I'm going to write about. And it does not, I mean, one of my favorite essays that I read was years ago about pixie tangerines, those little
Oh
tangerines.
yeah.
And the student wrote about what they do, you know, what kind of sustenance they provide while she's running from place to place, and was
Oh
able to
wow.
describe all these different things she did in her life so that you could really get a visual of who she was, but all through the kind of story of this little tangerine that keeps her energy on the go between places.
There
So
you go. I
it
love
doesn't have to
that.
be a big thing. Yeah.
Doesn't it could be a small tangerine, you
Hmm.
guys. It's gonna be
It's right.
okay.
It'll be okay.
I love that's so great. Okay, so I'm gonna put with this video some tips and stuff to go just to get students started. But overall, I think kind of my big takeaways are start early, brainstorm, just write, don't try to force it, rewrite, you know, have someone to help you edit it, but don't over edit. And then really just kind of narrow down where you're applying so you can organize your essays once you get into the senior year. Any last, I guess, tips or takeaways from you?
So no, that you actually perfectly succinctly, you know, said
Beautiful.
what's needed. I will say one thing: do a spreadsheet for the colleges that you're applying to. It will help you to be able to
Perfect.
stay organized, so that you can write, you know, this needs these many essays, this is the deadlines. You can just keep everything on one spreadsheet. That way it will help. But start early, because then, especially if you're planning to apply early decision or early action, if you have your draft done this summer as a junior, you will be in a good place.
Perfect. So get a spreadsheet, organize, start early. Well, thank you so much for
Of
taking the
course.
time with us,
Yeah, of course.
and we will chat later. And so for all of you guys at home, go ahead and start brainstorming.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thanks.